The morning sun spilled over the small town of Willowbrook, painting the cracked walls and dusty roads in golden light. Life here was simple, sometimes too simple, and dreams were often tucked away like old letters in forgotten drawers. But, among the hundreds of faces waking to another day, one girl carried a fire that refused to fade. Her name was Aisha Khan. At 16, Aisha wasn't the kind of girl people noticed right away. She had a quiet confidence, the kind that didn't shout but whispered strength. Her eyes were deep brown, filled with a constant spark of curiosity, and her notebook was always by her side. Inside it, she wrote stories, ideas, and goals that seemed too big for a girl from such a small town. Aisha lived with her mother, Farah, a tailor who worked long hours in their one-room house. Her father had passed away when Aisha was 9, leaving behind nothing but a box of books and a promise he had made to her. "Never stop learning, my little light. Even when life tries to put you out, burn brighter." Those words had become Aisha's secret strength. Every morning, after helping her mother with chores, Aisha would walk 3 kilometers to school. The road was dusty and her shoes were worn, but she walked with purpose. She loved school. She loved learning English the most. To her, English was not just a subject, it was a key. She believed it could open doors to a world far beyond Willowbrook. But life in a small town was not kind to big dreams. When Aisha spoke of becoming a teacher or studying abroad, people laughed. "Aisha, stop dreaming," one neighbor said. "Girls like us should learn sewing, not English." Even her classmates teased her when she practiced English aloud. "Why do you talk like foreigners?" they'd say. "You think you're better than us?" But Aisha didn't argue. She smiled politely and went home to study harder. Each night, after her mother fell asleep, she would sit by the dim lantern and whisper English sentences to herself, imagining she was speaking to the world. One rainy afternoon, a letter arrived at school, an announcement for the National English Speech Competition. The winner would receive a scholarship to a prestigious city school. Aisha's heart raced. This was it, her chance to prove herself. Her teacher, Mr. Salman, noticed her excitement. "Aisha," he said gently, "you have talent. You should participate." But then he hesitated. "The competition will be in the city. You'll need travel money and proper clothes. Can your family manage that?" Aisha's excitement dimmed for a moment, but then she smiled. "Sir, I'll find a way," that night she told her mother. Farah sighed, her tired hands pausing over the sewing machine. "Aisha, I want to help, but we barely earn enough for food. Maybe next year?" Aisha's chest tightened, but she nodded. "It's okay, Ami. I understand." However, deep inside, she made a silent promise. "I will not give up." The next morning, she began helping her mother with stitching orders after school. For 2 weeks straight, she worked until midnight, cutting fabric, threading needles, pressing clothes, and saved every rupee she could. Slowly, she collected enough to pay for her bus fare to the city and a simple white dress for the competition. The voice of courage. The day of the competition, Aisha stood backstage, trembling slightly. Around her were students from elite schools, dressed perfectly, speaking fluent English, confident and polished. She felt small among them, her hands cold and her notebook shaking. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The crowd was silent. She took a deep breath and began. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Khan, and I come from a small town where dreams are often forgotten. But today, I stand here to tell you, dreams are stronger than circumstances." Her voice was soft at first, but as she spoke about hope, education, and never giving up, something shifted inside her. She wasn't just speaking English anymore. She was speaking truth. Every word came from her heart. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Mr. Salman, watching from the audience, had tears in his eyes. Later that day, when the results were announced, Aisha's name wasn't among the top 3. She hadn't won. Her heart sank, but she smiled through it. She remembered her father's words, "Burn brighter." After the ceremony, a woman approached her. "You spoke beautifully," the woman said. I'm Mrs. Rebecca, one of the judges. You may not have won, but your story touched me. Keep going, young lady." That sentence became Aisha's medal. Returning home, Aisha faced mixed reactions. Some praised her courage. Others mocked her again. "So, what did your English get you?" They sneered. "You wasted time that could have been spent working." Even her mother, under pressure from relatives, started worrying. "Aisha, maybe they're right. We need stability. You can help me with the tailoring business. Dreams are good, but reality feeds us." For the first time, Aisha's faith wavered. She spent days in silence, questioning herself. Maybe she was foolish to dream beyond her limits. Then, one evening, while cleaning her father's old books, she found a page with his handwriting. "When you feel small, remember, even a candle can challenge the dark." She cried that night, but those tears washed away her doubt. She decided, "I'll study harder. I'll teach myself. I'll rise again." Aisha began teaching younger kids in her neighborhood for free. She turned their small courtyard into an open-air classroom. The children loved her lessons because she made learning fun. She used stories, songs, and real-life examples to teach English and confidence. Soon, people began to notice. Parents who once laughed now sent their kids to her. One day, a journalist visiting the town heard about the young teacher changing lives in a backyard. He interviewed Aisha and wrote an article titled, "The Girl Who Never Gave Up: Lighting Hope in Willowbrook." The article went viral online. Within weeks, people from across the country sent messages of support. A nonprofit organization reached out to sponsor Aisha's education. Her dream, the one everyone mocked, was beginning to take shape. A year later, Aisha stood outside the gates of Bright Future College, the city's top institution. She was now a scholarship student, confident, graceful, and determined. But success didn't erase her struggles. City life was hard. She faced discrimination for her accent and background. Some students avoided her. Some even laughed at her simple clothes. Yet, every time she felt low, she remembered her old students back home, the children waiting for her to succeed. "If I give up now," she whispered to herself, "what lesson will I leave them?" She studied day and night, often working part-time to support herself. Slowly, her English improved. She began participating in debates and even mentoring other students who struggled like she once did. One evening, she was invited to give a talk at a youth conference. Standing on stage once again, she looked at the crowd. Confident faces, curious eyes, and cameras flashing, she smiled and said, "A few years ago, I was just a village girl with a broken notebook and a dream. People told me to stop, to settle, to give up. But I didn't, because giving up would have meant killing the only light I had." The hall went silent, not out of boredom, but because her words hit deep. As she finished, the audience stood and applauded. This time, she didn't just speak English, she spoke life. Aisha's story has just begun. She has reached the city, but the real test of courage, identity, and purpose awaits her. The city of Lahore buzzed like a restless dream. Tall buildings, endless traffic, and people always rushing somewhere. For Aisha, it was a new world, exciting but intimidating. The air smelled of ambition, mixed with a loneliness she had never known before. Her first morning at Bright Future College began with a trembling heart and a neatly pressed uniform she had ironed twice to hide its wear. She entered the grand campus gates holding her scholarship letter like a passport to another universe. But very soon, she realized, the hardest journey wasn't getting here. It was fitting in. In her first class, students spoke fluent English, quoting famous authors and laughing with confidence. Aisha sat quietly, trying to understand every word. When the teacher asked for volunteers to read aloud, no one expected her hand to rise. But it did. She read carefully, pronouncing each word with effort. The room was silent until a voice at the back whispered, "She sounds so village." A few others laughed quietly. The sound cut deep, but Aisha kept her smile steady. That night, back in her small hostel room, she replayed those laughs in her mind. For a moment, she felt like the same little girl who once got mocked for dreaming too big. But she reminded herself, this is not the end. This is another beginning. So she wrote on the first page of her new notebook, "Every laugh against me is a lesson for my strength." Days turned into weeks. While others went to cafes and parties, Aisha spent her evenings in the library and language lab. She listened to English podcasts, practiced pronunciation, and wrote essays no one asked her to write. One day, her English teacher, Miss Sarah Malik, noticed her. "Aisha, you're always here," she said kindly. "Why don't you join the English club?" Aisha hesitated. "Ma'am, I don't think I'm ready yet," Miss Sarah smiled. "You'll never feel ready. Join anyway." And she did. At first, she barely spoke, but gradually she began sharing ideas. Her sentences were simple but full of meaning, and that made people listen. The laughter faded. Respect grew. By the end of the semester, Aisha was selected to represent her college at the Intercity Youth Speech Challenge, the very competition she had once lost years ago. This time, she wasn't afraid. The return of fear, the competition day came. Aisha stood backstage remembering her first speech years ago. The trembling hands, the blinding lights, the quiet disappointment. But she also remembered Mrs. Rebecca's words. "Keep going, young lady." When her turn came, she walked confidently to the podium. Her topic, belonging in a world that doubts you. She began softly. "For a long time I believed belonging meant being accepted, but I've learned. It means accepting yourself, even when the world does not." Her speech flowed like music, honest, emotional, full of power. When she finished, the crowd stood and clapped. That night, when the results were announced, Aisha didn't just win. She topped the entire competition. Tears filled her eyes as she held the gold medal. But it wasn't pride she felt. It was peace. She whispered to herself, "Abba, I did it." Success came with new challenges. Media outlets wanted to interview her. Teachers praised her. Students who once mocked her now asked for advice. But with attention came pressure. She was now known as the girl who never gave up. People expected her to be perfect, always strong, always positive. But inside, she was still just Aisha, a girl trying to balance study, part-time work, and homesickness. Some nights, she broke down silently in her room. "Why do I feel so tired when I'm finally succeeding?" She asked herself. Miss Sarah once found her crying in the empty classroom. "Aisha," she said gently, "strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means breaking and still continuing." Those words stayed with her forever. One morning, she received a letter from her mother. The handwriting was shaky but full of warmth. "My dearest Aisha, I saw your photo in the newspaper. The whole town talks about you now. The same people who once laughed at you now send their daughters to my stitching shop saying, 'Make her uniform like Aisha's.' My heart is proud, but my hands miss you. Come home soon." Hummy, tears rolled down her cheeks. She realized that her journey wasn't just changing her life, it was changing others' beliefs too. That weekend, she visited Willowbrook. When she arrived, children ran to her shouting, "Teacher Aisha! Teacher Aisha!" Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering, "You proved that dreams don't need rich people, just brave hearts." Aisha spent the weekend teaching her old students again. But this time, something was different. She had confidence, methods, and a vision. She decided to create a small initiative. The Light Project. Free English and confidence classes for village kids. Her college friends helped online by sending materials. Miss Sarah donated books. Slowly, the backyard school turned into a registered community learning center. Newspapers began covering her again, but this time not for her medals. They wrote about her mission. One headline read, "The Girl Who Never Gave Up," now helping others to rise. But not everyone celebrated her success. Some people accused her of doing it for fame. Others said, "She's forgotten where she came from." The criticism hurt deeply. Even some of her college peers became distant. Aisha began doubting herself again. One evening, she sat on the rooftop of her hostel, watching the sunset fade behind the city skyline. "Maybe they're right," she whispered. "Maybe I'm changing too much." Then her phone buzzed. A message from one of her old students. "Miss Aisha, I got selected for a scholarship because of you." She smiled through her tears. That one message reminded her why she started. "I'm not changing," she said softly. "I'm growing, and helping others grow." Months later, she received a surprise email from Mrs. Rebecca, the same judge from her first speech years ago. "Dear Aisha, I read about your light project. Your story has inspired me and many others. We're organizing an international youth summit on education, and I would be honored if you would speak there." Aisha read the email 3 times, her hands shaking. She was being invited to speak on an international stage, the dream she once whispered to her lantern light years ago. She called her mother immediately. "Ummy, they want me to speak in London." "London?" Her mother gasped. "Oh, my daughter, your father's dream is alive in you." As the airplane lifted off the ground, Aisha looked down at the glittering city lights below. She remembered the dusty road to her old school, the laughter of children in her backyard classroom, and the tears of struggle that shaped her courage. She whispered, "This is not the end. It's the beginning of a new fight." The airplane touched down at Heathrow Airport, London. The cold air bit gently at Aisha's face as she stepped out of the terminal, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and wonder. She had never been outside Pakistan before. The buildings were taller, the air sharper, the faces unfamiliar. But she carried with her something stronger than comfort: purpose. A driver, holding a sign that read, "Ms. Aisha Khan, Global Youth Education Summit," waved at her. She smiled politely, still hardly believing it was real. In the car, she looked out at the endless roads, flashing lights and billboards that seemed to whisper the same message: "You've come far. Don't stop now." At the hotel, surrounded by polished marble and elegant people, Aisha suddenly felt small again. Other delegates from around the world were there, confident, stylish, fluent in English. They introduced themselves with ease. "Hi, I'm Daniel from Canada. I'm Sophia from Spain. I'm Layla from Egypt." When it was her turn, Aisha said softly, "Hello, I'm Aisha, from Pakistan." A polite smile followed, but she could sense the subtle distance. Their clothes, their accent, their confidence, everything felt beyond her reach. That night, in her room overlooking the city lights, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I don't belong here." She opened her old notebook, the same one she carried from Willowbrook. Inside, on a yellowing page, was her father's handwriting. "You belong wherever courage is needed." She closed the book, took a deep breath, and smiled. Then, "I belong right here." The next morning, the Grand Hall was filled with hundreds of people, educators, leaders, journalists, and students from 40 different countries. Aisha sat quietly, her heart racing. She was the youngest speaker on the list, just 21. When the announcer called her name, she walked onto the stage wearing a simple shalwar kameez and a soft white scarf, a symbol of her roots. For a moment, she stood silently, looking at the crowd. Then she began, "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aisha Khan. I come from a small town called Willowbrook, a place where dreams were once considered too expensive for ordinary people. But I'm here to tell you, hope is free." The audience leaned in. Her words were simple, but they carried emotion like thunder. She spoke about her father's death, her mother's struggles, and her journey from a dusty classroom to this international stage. "I didn't have expensive books or private tutors. I had something better: belief. Belief that even a small candle can challenge the dark." The hall went silent. Some people wiped tears. "Today, I'm not here because I never failed," she said. "I'm here because I never stopped trying." When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. People from different countries came up to hug her, shake her hand, and tell her how her story touched them. One of them, a man named Dr. Henry Collins, the head of an international education foundation, said, Miss Aisha, your story is extraordinary. Would you consider partnering with us to bring your light project to other developing countries? Aisha blinked, unable to speak for a moment. Yes, sir, she said softly. That's my dream. When she returned home, things changed quickly. Newspapers across the country celebrated her success. The government offered support for her education program. Donors and organizations began contacting her, offering help. Within a year, the Light Project expanded into multiple regions. Hundreds of children from rural villages began learning English, public speaking, and confidence building through her free programs. Aisha trained local volunteers, many of them once her students, to become Light mentors. Each week, she traveled to new villages, sometimes on long bus rides, sometimes walking for miles. Education isn't about classrooms, she told them. It's about courage, the courage to believe you can learn, no matter who you are. The project soon gained international recognition. Aisha was invited to speak at universities, NGOs, and media shows. Her message was always the same: never give up. Not because success is guaranteed, but because growth is. But success came at a cost. Aisha was working non-stop, traveling, speaking, managing, teaching. Her health began to decline. Her mother noticed during a video call. Aisha, your eyes look tired. Are you sleeping? Just busy, Ami. So many kids depend on me. You can't help others if you forget to help yourself, her mother said gently. Aisha smiled, but inside she felt an ache, not just in her body, but in her soul. She missed home. She missed peace. One evening, as she sat by her window in Lahore, a sudden phone call shattered the quiet. Her mother had fallen ill. Without a second thought, Aisha rushed home. The woman who had stitched her dreams together now lay weak in bed. Ami, please, you'll be okay, Aisha whispered, holding her hand. Her mother smiled faintly. My daughter, I'm proud. You gave light to others. Now promise me, you'll keep shining, no matter what happens. Those were the last words her mother ever said. After her mother's passing, Aisha fell into a deep silence. She stopped answering calls, stopped teaching, stopped writing. The world she built, the hope she carried, suddenly felt heavy. For weeks, she stayed in Willowbrook, walking the same roads she once dreamed of escaping. Everything reminded her of her mother: the sewing machine, the backyard school, the lantern. One night, while sorting through her mother's things, she found a small envelope with her name on it. Inside was a letter and a small pendant. My dear Aisha, you once said I gave you courage. But the truth is, you gave it to me. You taught me to dream again. Whenever life feels heavy, wear this pendant and remember, your strength is not in never falling. It's in rising every time you do. She held the pendant close, tears flowing freely. That night, she looked up at the stars and whispered, I will rise again, Ami. I promise. Slowly, she returned to her work, this time calmer, more focused, and wiser. She began writing her experiences in a book titled The Girl Who Never Gave Up. It wasn't about fame or success. It was about truth, about pain, growth, and the small victories that built her journey. The book became a bestseller, translated into several languages, and used in schools to inspire young learners. In one of her later interviews, she said, When I was little, I wanted to learn English to escape my world. Now I teach English so others can transform theirs. 10 years later, Willowbrook had changed completely. Where there was once dust and despair, there were schools, libraries, and small businesses. Children walked proudly with books in hand, many wearing uniforms stitched by local tailors, just like Aisha's mother once did. A tall building stood in the center of town, the Aisha Khan Community Learning Center, named after her mother. During the inauguration ceremony, Aisha cut the ribbon with trembling hands and whispered, We did it, Ami. Hundreds of children cheered. In that moment, she realized this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of many others. Years later, at another international summit, Aisha stood before thousands of people. Her hair was streaked with gray now, but her eyes still burned with that same fire. "When I was a girl," she began, "people told me to stop dreaming. They said my place was behind a sewing machine, not a microphone. But I learned that life doesn't give us our place. We create it." The crowd listened, mesmerized. "If you're struggling right now, if you feel invisible or small, remember me. I was that girl too, the one everyone doubted, the one who failed and fell and cried. But I never stopped, and that's all you need to do. Don't stop." Her voice trembled, but her smile was steady. The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs persistent ones. So, whatever your dream is, protect it. Fight for it. And even when life tries to break you, never give up. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered. Tears glistened, and in that moment, under the bright lights, Aisha felt her parents' presence, proud, smiling, eternal. Years later, long after Aisha's speeches and books became part of classrooms and hearts around the world, a young girl in a small village opened her English textbook. On the first page, she found a quote, "A candle loses nothing by lighting another." "Aisha Khan," the girl smiled, inspired. And somewhere far away, under the same sky, Aisha looked up at the stars, the same stars that once watched her struggle, and whispered, "I never gave up, and neither will they."